Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted that you can join us for what is set to be a powerful and action-packed discussion. And Char, thank you so much for joining us. Like so many, I'm inspired by your work, your advocacy, and your impact-focused entrepreneurialism. And I know you're busy as Global Director of Advocacy at Natura & Co, which is an inspiring B Corp. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Well, the feeling is entirely mutual. Thank you so much for the invitation to be in this conversation.
If I could start, could you share with us a little bit more about the work that you're doing at Natura & Co and your role within the business?
Well, thank you so much for the invitation to be with you all today. And I'm so excited about this conversation and some of the topics we're going to cover. I've actually just recently celebrated my 2-year anniversary at Natura & Co. And over those 2 years, we've, as a team, kind of worked on and shaped and developed and refined what it means to be a business that is actively engaged in advocacy. And there's this one line that I really take huge inspiration from, and it comes from Oxford Net Zero. And a really incredible thought leader that's part of that group, Kaya Axelson, she actually wrote a report, and one of the phrases that was part of the framing of this piece was that, we absolutely need net zero businesses, right? But the problem is that just individual businesses acting and achieving these targets is going to be really important, but actually what we also need is a net zero world. So we need businesses that are also advocating and activating for that wider systems change for that world. And I really took that to heart. So I think at its essence, that's really what advocacy is about. It's about recognizing that absolutely we need businesses to be achieving these extraordinary changes to their business models and how they operate. That's the being a net zero business. And we need businesses to be championing for a net zero world. And we can include in those words net zero, regenerative, just, equal, but we need businesses to be advocating for that change in the system. Now, advocacy, if we are sort of focusing on systems change, really kind of boils itself down to 2 elements. And I mean, it's much more complicated than 2 things, but I know systems change in itself is actually a really complicated term, and people sort of sometimes struggle to understand what that means in practice. But we also take inspiration from the B Corp movement, and one of the definitions that they use to sort of shape systems change is to look at how we engage in both policy change and culture change. And so at its essence, that's what really advocacy is about. It's about championing for a net zero, regenerative, just and equal world. And it's doing that by engaging in systems change. So changing policies and changing culture.
Thank you, Char. That's fascinating. You speak of activating businesses there. And I wonder if you could help us go a little layer deeper here. How can we really activate the businesses that we engage with, that we work in a really systemic way?
Oh, what a great question. So I think that does go a little step deeper in terms of what does this look like in practice. Number one, it's working really closely across the business. So it's really understanding a range of different functions within the organization. I think I'm really, I work really closely with our sustainability team, our communications team, our supply chain and operations. And in doing that, it's really to understand how we can identify what are the key areas that we as a business really want to take a stand on. And we have a series of principles that sort of underpin how we approach advocacy, how we approach the things that we take a stand on. We need to be, number one, authentic. So we have to be absolutely clear from where we've come from and where we are, and be authentic and transparent. We need to also be ambitious. So we know that the problems that we are facing in this world are extraordinary, and that requires us to take extraordinary action. So really being clear and being guided by the science in terms of what those ambitions should be. It's also about recognizing that people within our business have agency. And that is a really important part of the practice of advocacy, is again, holding and recognizing and helping people understand the power they have, the agency they have, and helping them understand where and how they can use that power as a force for good. We also include activism in our sort of 5 A's of principles that underpin our work, because we do know that there is an important role that's being played by social movements, and sometimes we know we need to get a bit uncomfortable. So activism is part of it. And then lastly, it's about allyship. So really recognizing that allyship is about how we work together with others in alliances and constellations and coalitions. But it also takes its root from the social justice movement. So allyship is also about recognizing the voice and the privilege that we have and looking for ways to actively help lift up the voices of those who wouldn't otherwise have access to the spaces that we do. So when it comes to what can a business do, I mean, those are the principles that we use to underpin how we identify as a business, what we want to take a stand on, and then how we mobilize people, both inside our business and also outside our business, to understand it and figure out what are the things that they want to take a stand on. But I'd say the most important thing that we do as a business, and the thing that really helps us achieve our advocacy goals, it's really about how we join forces with others. So who are the partners we work with, and how do we build a level of, again, alignment, connection, and a spirit of partnership to address these systems challenges together.
Thank you. I'm going to really take away the partnership element there. I think that's such a great and powerful point. I'd really love to explore with you the interconnectedness between the environmental challenges and the social challenges that we face together. And I wonder if you can speak to that and the role that business has in bringing those two elements into one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is something we feel really strongly about as a business. You know, we are clearly a business that cares deeply about climate and about nature. I mean, our headquarters in Brazil, we've been doing a ton of work in the Amazon for many, many years. And our business itself is a business of women. So in our global network, we have over, or almost, Sreya, that might have to be cut a little bit. We have 6 million beauty consultants, the vast majority of whom are women. And what's so exciting is that we really are showing where there is a really powerful integration of both what we do to support people and how we engage in addressing the climate and nature emergencies that we're facing. So now how that shows up in the work that we do really is about the partnerships we're engaging in. So we have been a member of the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, the TNFD, but we're also really excited. We're on the working group for the TSIFD, which is the Task Force for Social Inequality Financial Disclosures. And what's really great about that is I think we're going to see a space where, where we do see climate, nature, and social areas having a lot of energy and activity in them. I think what we really are excited about is how these things are coming together. Again, as a business that works across these different areas, we know how important it is to make sure that actually all the actions we take are centered in the importance and the power of people.
Thank you, Char. That's really important to take away and remember. You are fortunate, as I am and others are, to work for businesses that are truly a force for good and are a B Corp. But there are less than 10,000 B Corps in the world. What advice would you give for those that don't work for a company that is a force for good? What can they do to prod and to probe to help move their business in the right direction that we all need to see?
Well, it's such a good question because clearly the B Corp movement is a movement of leaders, people in business who are leaders, and that is a community that is growing quickly. But also any business can be a part of this sort of movement that's happening, which is to show and prove that we can use the power of business as a force for good. So any business can adopt, for example, the Articles of Association that are a requirement to become a B Corp, where you actually have to amend your articles or your bylaws to make it explicit that you're about, yes, your shareholders, because you're a business, and your stakeholders, and in spelling out who those stakeholders are in some cases. So every business has the opportunity to do that. And every business also has the opportunity to use the tools of the B Corp movement. And whether or not you reach that certification level or not, I think we would all understand that there's ways in which we can improve, and we can use that certification as a guide to make sure we are doing the best we can in sort of the areas that B Corp has done a ton of work in to develop those standards. So again, regardless if you're in a B Corp or not, you can be advocating and championing for the legal articles and the bylaws. And there's some important campaigns that are happening around the world to make that even easier for businesses. And anyone can use the tools that are a part of the B Corp movement. So again, going on to that B impact assessment and just seeing where you end up and where you can improve. That idea of continuous improvement, I think, is a really important principle of what the B Corp movement represents.
Char, thank you. And further to that, with the unique insights that you have in your role, what are you seeing that gives you hope?
Oh, it's such a great question. So I really love this because I am an optimist in my heart. And actually, there's a great word I learned a few years ago that I really hold on to quite tightly. And that word is heliotropy. And what it is, it's a word that refers to the tendency of plants to grow in the direction of sun. And so I imagine this field of sunflowers, and that as the sun crosses the sky, the sunflower blooms, they follow it. And I think we as humans are not that different than our cousins in the flora community. I really believe we will grow taller and stronger and faster when we are motivated by things that are full of light and positivity and warmth. But sunflowers are also radical in that the word radical meaning rooted, right? They're rooted to the ground. They're rooted to the ground that they grow from. And I think that's an important part of this metaphor too. So we can be hopeful and we can be guided by things that are full of that sort of warmth and that positivity. But with the urgency of the challenges we're facing, we also need to be rooted and really deeply connected to the urgency and to the level of challenges that we have ahead. So where I go to find my hope and my excitement about where that sun is actually working with business school students. And I'm in the midst of teaching a class right now called Business 2030. And just the empathy, the care, the courage, the questioning that's coming from these business students, whilst also being deeply grounded in what the sort of situation is in the world. I think being able to hold those two forces, the hope and sort of the really sort of radical connection to what's going on, that's the stuff that gives me a lot of energy right now.
Thank you. I think hope is something that we all need buckets of right now. And thank you for sharing that story. So Char, thank you for spending some time with us today. All the best with your future work and for being a part of Climate Action Live.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's always great to be in conversation.